On this day, 57 years ago, my father, Fred Miller of Camden, Arkansas, was wounded while serving in the Republic of South Vietnam. He was 23 years old and, as a result, spent 9 months in a full-body cast at the Portsmouth Naval Hospital. While there, he acquired many amazing stories that I would love to tell you, but they are not mine to tell. I hope someday you will be able to hear my dad tell his delightfully humorous stories from experiences in training, combat, injury recovery, and life. Until then, a story that I can tell, because it is about one of my favorite aunties, may help to explain what I'm doing here and what I hope to achieve. You see, my family's commitment to the United States of America goes back to the French and Indian Wars. We have had a family member in each war or conflict through Vietnam. My great-grandmother, Sceleta Caroline Abernathy Smith, was a descendant of Captain Robert Abernathy, who fought in the American Revolution. Her youngest daughter of 18 children, Sceleta Caroline Smith Miller, my grandmother, married James A. Miller, who was in World War I. They had 4 sons who were in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam, all as servicemen in the United States Navy. Well, of those 8 children, this story is about 2 of them, my Aunt Jane and my father Fred. You see, while my dad was in that full-body cast at Portsmouth Naval Hospital all those years ago, a not-so-common thing happened. The hospital had an outing. They loaded up wounded sailors and Marines onto school buses and took them out to the airport for a ceremony to be presented their Purple Hearts by President of the United States, Lyndon B. Johnson. Since my dad was in the full-body cast, they didn't want to move him, but they also didn't tell him what was going on. They just left him alone in the orthopedic ward. About the time everyone was getting back from the ceremony, my Aunt Jane called. And once someone plugged the phone in at his bed, she started asking all the usual questions I imagine a big sister would ask her little brother who was far away from home and recovering from a wound sustained in combat on foreign soil. So my dad tells her all the updates, including what happened that day, that a lot of the guys in the ward were taken out to the airport and presented their Purple Hearts by the president. My dad said it went quiet on the other end of the line, and Aunt Jane didn't say anything for a few moments, perhaps waiting to hear what she needed to hear. And when it never came, she asked him, "Did you get your Purple Heart?" My dad explained and assured her it was all right because he would rather wait till he got back to the SEAL team and they would give it to him there. Well, the next morning, the hospital staff moved my dad to a quiet room. You see, the quiet room was not a place anybody wanted to be. It had padded walls and ceiling, and if a patient screamed, no one would hear them. When it became clear that my dad was not having a procedure or any alteration to his cast, he started to become curious, and when he could, he asked the doctor what was going on. At first, the doctor didn't want to say much. Come to find out, he was told not to talk to him. But eventually, he told my dad that his sister, my Aunt Jane, had called the White House and blessed out the president for not coming to the hospital and for him not receiving his Purple Heart with everyone else. Well, this caused a big dust-up. Soon, people started filing into the quiet room, all Navy officers, commander, and above. None of them said anything as they gathered close around my father's bed, but not too close. There had to be room enough for the 1-star to come up to the bed and hand my dad his Purple Heart. Once he did, he took a right face, left, and everyone followed behind. Afterward, the doctor came back into the quiet room and my dad told him he wanted to go back out into the ward. The doctor told him no, that he was told to leave him in the quiet room. My dad objected. He didn't want to stay in there alone. He wanted to be out in the ward with the rest of his friends. The doctor tried to object again, but this time my father told him that he would call his sister if he didn't take him back out to the ward. "Oh my God, you wouldn't do that, would you?" It didn't take 5 minutes and they were wheeling me back to my old position. My Aunt Jane, not 100 pounds soaking wet, a lady with a strong sense of right and wrong from Camden, Arkansas, had gotten an entire ward of officers on their feet because she stood up and took action for what she thought was right and necessary. After my dad had been on the ortho ward at the Portsmouth Naval Hospital for so long, I was kind of like a fixture. He didn't really see anyone much. His friends were going back and forth to Vietnam and other places, but two people continued to come and visit every Friday: Bob Gallagher and Jake Rhinebolt. Jake had come to see my dad on Thanksgiving Day, 1968. My dad calls this one of my most appreciated things. Thanksgiving 1968, Jake Rhinebolt came by at lunchtime to drop off some books and see how my dad was doing. My dad was laying there in bed with his Thanksgiving meal on his tray, and all of a sudden he saw Jake's face. It turned beet red. Jake pointed his finger at my dad's tray and asked, "What's that?" "Well, that's my food. This is Thanksgiving. You didn't get any turkey?" And he became so irate, all he could do was continue to repeat, "You didn't get any turkey? You didn't get any GD turkey?" So Jake picked up my dad's tray, walks off, and gets on the elevator. I'm told you could hear him all the way to the elevator, and while he was in the elevator, you could still hear him. Well, everyone on the ward could see and hear what was happening at my dad's bed, and when Jake got on the elevator, they were dumbfounded at how loud and mean he sounded. They just had to look at his face. I just shrugged my shoulders. 20 minutes later, the elevator doors opened, and there were little push carts, food service carts, the 3-tier hotel carts, all topped with Thanksgiving turkey displays. I'm told it wound up being 6 little carts, and all the guys on the ward started cheering. They were cheering because they got turkey for Thanksgiving, and it was quite a sight for a while, I'm told. My dad said he heard later that some guy from Little Creek had gone upstairs to the wardroom where the officers ate, rather upset, saying that the sailors and Marines didn't get any turkey for Thanksgiving. Then he cleaned out the wardroom. If you were one of his men, he would take up for you. If you were in the right, he would take up for you like stink on shit. I can just imagine him getting on them about not serving us turkey on Thanksgiving. But if you were in the wrong, you'd know it. He was just an officer who looked out for his troops. I don't know, but I think Jake got in trouble over it. But he had been in the Navy for so long, he didn't care. Growing up, my dad always said he would keep his good eye on me, and he did. Now, when we're together, I find myself looking out for him. Walking through any place that is busy, like the airport, I become a little nervous. I know that people are busy trying to get to their destinations within the time constraints, and they may be stressed in that environment or for whatever reason they are traveling. I worry that they will not be paying attention and run into him accidentally. They don't know that he has a combat injury that created that distinct walk, or that his knees give out unexpectedly from time to time, or quick movements to get out of someone's way are just not possible. I worry that the person at the coffee shop won't have patience for him when he talks loudly. They don't know that all his life he has been around firearms and other explosives, resulting in a loss of hearing. Then, when all he wants is a black coffee, but doesn't remember to use the term drip, and he asks questions, I worry that the person behind the counter might not take a moment to consider that he's from another generation. I get nervous because I know that people do not always treat each other with love and kindness. Lately, once being at the deposition this past May, I have heard a few times that the museum respects Fred's service. What I don't hear is that they respect Fred as a patron, as an integral part of the establishment of the museum, and as a human being. Despite being a member of a group that he cares for so dearly, loaning property awash in memories and meaning, and expertly curating a collection of firearms and knives to convey the history of the U.S. Navy SEAL from World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. There has been little respect shown to Fred Miller or his property. As some of you may know, I help my dad with his social media. We read the comments together and I type his responses. Recently, I clicked to join a related group and was taken aback when we received the following response. The admins of this page discussed your request to join this group. We are aware of the legal claim that you have against the UDT SEAL Museum. Let your case run its course in the legal system and do not bring it here. If you agree, I will approve your request. Being mindful of time, I'll pull out one phrase. Let your case run its course in the legal system. My father should not have a case in the legal system at all. In 2019, I witnessed firsthand the poor treatment by some team guys towards my father. Despite Captain Olson still being with us, and my dad asking the museum to again return his loaned property, neither man was respected enough for the museum to open up a dialogue about the return of my father's property. Based on the museum director's words that day, it was made clear that my father would not have his property returned to him without a lawsuit. In 2020, we sent the museum a civil theft demand letter, the first step necessary when preparing to file a civil theft claim in Florida. At that time, through our attorney, all we asked for was the return of my father's property, and the museum refused. Thus, we filed our first claim, then our second amended, and our third amended. The museum made it clear they would not only make this difficult and costly, but they would not return my father's property in full. They would return everything they don't want. Then, in August 2021, 1 year after the initial letter and multiple amended filings, our attorney conveyed that the museum was not open to mediation and is not open to return all items. Why not? Why has the museum fought so hard to keep my father's loaned property? When someone says, let your case run its course in the legal system, it tells me that they either know something or have no respect or consideration for the person having to go through such an arduous process. If there was a problem with my dad's property, and the museum had just said, hey Fred, can we talk? My dad would have been reasonable in his response. I see posts online that say never forget our military men and women that we have lost. But what does that mean? To me, it means that we carry forward all the attributes that make us miss them. That is how we fight for them, by remembering their legacy and bringing it forward into today. I come from a long line of patriots, some of them like my aunties in a supportive role. We fight for our soldiers at home, caring for them on their bad days and being so proud to call them ours every day. So that is what I am doing here. What I was taught by a long line of patriots and strong women. I am fighting for our veteran. I am fighting for my dad because it is the right thing to do. Respecting my dad for his service, well, that's not difficult. That comes easy to a fellow patriot. Respecting my dad as a human being, as a patron, and as an integral part of the opening of the National Navy UDT SEAL Museum has proved difficult for some of our country's most fierce warriors. To those of you who do, thank you with all my heart. Doing something when it is difficult, doing the right thing when you're alone, and fighting for someone because it is the right thing to do, that is who I call on now. My father deserves your support, making sure that all veterans have a voice in every battle they fight, overseas or on the home front. Because none of this had to happen.